It's been a crazy morning. I've been up since 5, so I'm pretty beat, but ready still to finish building my line. Not quite done with yet. Rody, how you doing over there? It's wild, huh?
Yeah, it's been pretty wild this morning, man. I've got a lot of lineups going on. Stayed up late last night, past midnight building. A lot of single entry, 3 entry, and then today I've been working on the 150 builds, and it's been messy. So
Yeah, I hear you. I totally
a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a one of those days. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to go. Obviously, it's week 1, so we can speculate a lot more. I think you can spread out some of your ownerships instead of having to just take a hard stand. But if you're playing the 150 and all that stuff. But I definitely have some games that I'm targeting that I like. What games are you targeting the most? And why don't we start with that and we can move into positions?
I guess I got a Green Bay shirt on today, so I'm looking into Green Bay a lot today with Rodgers stacks. I like Russell Wilson's kind of big for me. Tyler Lockett, Metcalf a little bit lower on. I'm trying to get a little bit more exposure there. I'm getting a lot of Pittman Jr. as run back there. So yeah, those are some of my main stacks. I'm kind of lower on the higher stacks of Josh Allen seems to be more popping. I'm a little bit less on him and stuff like that. I got Mahomes too, I guess. I got a lot of him. So
yeah, I hear you. I'm into the Green Bay game as well. I have Green Bay, Buffalo, Arizona, and I really like this Seattle side, especially on that Seattle-Indy game. So I'm going to play a little bit of Jonathan Taylor, hoping that they can build a lead, try and run the ball, and then Russell Wilson will do his Russell Wilson comeback thing. Trying to play into that narrative a little bit. There's a lot of cheap receivers that we can speculate on. So I definitely I do have Callaway in some lineups, especially where I'm way off the board. But I don't think that he's like a must play for me in any form. Where do you stand with Callaway and then maybe some of the other receivers that you really like?
I'm pretty light on Callaway. I've tried to group out those 3K receivers. I kind of showed that in a video. I'm kind of paying up for a mid-tier build more. So I'm kind of off him a little bit, So I don't know. I'm just kind of taking a stand there, I guess. If he goes off, he kind of beats me, I guess. So I'm a little heavy on Kamara on FanDuel. So, and I'm taking the stand on Callaway a little bit more. So.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, there's other guys we can go down to, right? I do like Callaway. I think Damian Harris in that game is a play I really like. Just to you change the Callaway. It could easily be Damian Harris's day. I mean, maybe not just as easily, but certainly it's in the cards. It's definitely an option. Elijah Moore obviously is going to have ownership as well. I think he's actually probably going to be similar to Callaway. You've got Pittman, who's a former popular. I don't think many people are going to play Paris Campbell, who I like a lot, which we talked about, I think, before on the show. Maybe it was me and Sheets who did. Jalen Waddle, Terrence Marshall. All these guys have upside. Jalen Reagor. And I think that taking the lower owned options, especially week 1 when we still don't know how things are going to play out, is certainly an interesting way to go. Or you could play some of those guys with Callaway, running back. I personally might want people who are playing the high running backs today. I have them more on FanDuel. But I do have some Derrick Henry in my game stacks over there, in my game stacks of that Tennessee game. But I think it's you have a lot of on DraftKings, especially from James Robinson, Antonio Gibson, Harris. All these guys are the range that I'm finding myself in more. One guy who no one's going to play today, and who I was going to be low on when people I thought were going to be high on him, but because of the questionable tag until this morning, was Eckler. I do like Eckler a little bit. But I feel like that 5,900, 6,200, Mike Davis, who you mentioned on our show before, a little bit of Chase Edmonds. I just am not paying all the way up as much. It does scare me a little bit, especially with Dalvin Cook and McCaffrey, and I do have some exposure to them, but I'm definitely below the field. Where do you stand on running backs like that? And what's your sort of approach?
Yeah, Gibson, Robinson, Davis, those are my highest exposures. Eckler, I love. I bumped him up quite a bit today. I do have a lot of the Chargers stack. Keenan Allen, Jared Cook a little bit more at tight end to get a little different in that stack, like Keenan, Jared Cook, and running back with Love. Terry McLaurin's cheap. Gibson's cheap, so good run backs. I really like that Washington game. And
I think Logan Thomas you didn't mention as well. I think he fits.
Oh, yeah, he's my highest tight end on FanDuel as well. So I got tons of him over there. I'm kind of getting off the Pitts. I'm kind of staying with maybe more Kelsey, Thomas, Cook, some of those guys that I like in my stacks. Kind of Everett a little bit with the Seattle stack, kind of mix it up. He's cheaper on DK. So kind of getting a little bit different that way.
Yeah, I'm definitely doing some of that as well. I'm looking at my ownership. I do have a decent amount of Pitts, but again, they're in my lineups where I'm not so worried about having a little bit of chalk. I do prefer him straight up over Logan Thomas and Noah Fant, but I think those are great pivots off of him if you're worried a little bit about ownership, and especially in the millionaire maker. The only, I should say, the one running back who I am sort of forcing him to spend up on and making sure I get enough of is Kamara. I do think that his potential workload in that kind of game, especially if you're betting against Callaway, what is really the path for him so how does somebody's going to have to get the usage, right? Like, I mean, it's not that I think Green Bay's defense is solid enough, all this stuff. Sean Payton's a great coach. They're going to find a way to move the ball. I just find it impossible to believe that nobody's going to do anything. So I'm finding myself with some Kamara because I want to fade more of the Callaway, even though, again, I do have some Callaway as well. What are your thoughts on specifically Kamara in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be a good play. I couldn't fade him. I had to play him a lot. I definitely think Callaway's got more question marks, so we'll wait and see today more. So I like getting the Kamara. I still got a lot of him on FanDuel. He might be my highest running back. I'm actually trying to bring him down some. I think he's popping to like 40% of my builds. On DraftKings. He's popping in 20 to 30% of my builds. So I tried to bring him down a little bit, but I'm still getting a lot more of him than Callaway.
Yeah, I definitely him a little bit on. I get the play on FanDuel, especially everything works out. It's easy enough to get him in, all that stuff. I actually have him more on DraftKings, I think, than I do on FanDuel. I do have him some on FanDuel, but only because I have him on FanDuel partially because I'm stacking Rodgers a lot over there. But I do think that I don't know, just because of the PPR factor, that's sort of what I was looking at when I was trying to justify the fate of Callaway. And I just think Callaway and Harris or none of the receivers do anything. He could have 12 receptions. He could have 13 receptions in this game. And that still probably gets you there on FanDuel, but you're going to want him to get in the end zone at least once if you're going to be playing him over there, I think. All right, let's talk about some other things. So we talked about tight end a little bit. We talked about wide receiver. I know the general approach is let's spend down on defense, and I think that makes perfect sense this week. One of my favorite combinations is James Robinson with the Jags defense. We sort of talked about that on our other show. I think that the 2,700 to 2,500. I don't even mind playing Atlanta. I'm sorry, or Cincinnati if you need to do it. Where are you ending up on defense?
Well, for defense right now, FanDuel's giving me a ton of the Bills. I'm trying to get lower on that. I had to bring them down quite a bit. You're getting a lot of the Falcons at cheap on DK at 2K. I do like the Jags. I do like the Broncos. I think if you're really, really trying to figure out a defense to get a little bit different, Jaguars, I don't think Houston's going to be very good. And I think pairing Robinson with the Jaguars or Davis with the Falcons, you can get away with. Hoping for a turnover in those games, with Houston being not good and Hurts running around, throwing it up or fumble or something, you get some sacks. So you can kind of go there, but it's going to be chalky. Falcons on DK are going to be chalky, but I like the Broncos. I like the Jaguars. Jaguars are 2-7 on DK. I think easy to get to that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Say what's up to K9 Bronco. Say what's up to Pug Daddy in the chat. I just am looking at one thing K9 Bronco said about Chalky Allen. I don't know what I'm assuming is. So one thing we have to do when we talk football, we can't use last names. We have to say we can say DeAndre Hopkins. We can say Hopkins, I guess. But we have 4 legitimate Moores in play today. You know what I mean? So Keenan Allen, I'm assuming is who you're talking about. But I don't think Keenan Allen's chalky by any means. Do you? I'm not getting that at all.
No, Keenan Allen's a great lower own play. Eckler, that game, I don't think anybody's on the Chargers. That's why I like it.
Yeah, I get it. And by the way, you can't try and win the millionaire week 1 without playing a little bit of Fitz in the $5, in my opinion.
That's a good too. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. Oh, Josh Allen. See, that's what I mean. So we have to just say the names because it's really hard to know which. So Josh Allen, yes, he will be chalky. And Murray and Hopkins, those are all going to be chalky combinations. I don't think there's anything wrong with that though. They're chalky somewhat for a reason. I do have a little bit of concern about the Tennessee-Arizona game, even though I like the game to target, but I'm with the field on that game, I would say probably, because I don't think it's a guarantee that Tennessee is going to play as fast as they did last year. And I don't know if their defense is going to be quite as bad as people expect. I definitely like pieces of that game, and there's pieces you can get a low. It's funny because everybody likes that game, but no one wants to play Derrick Henry and no one wants to play Julio Jones, and I'm happy to be that guy who plays that in my stacks. But I don't feel like I feel like that's the game that has the most buzz going, and everybody's sure it's sped up. there is a path where, 6 yards for Derrick Henry, 6 yards for Derrick Henry, 6 yards for Derrick Henry. You know what I mean? Yeah, maybe it sets up a big action play to one of the receivers here and there. But I could see that game playing a little slower than people think on the Tennessee side of it. At the same time, I don't believe in Arizona's defense. So I'm just I'm wishy-washy on that, which is why I'm sort of with the field. I really love the game that you like. I love the Packers and New Orleans. I think that's a good game to bet the over, by the way. I just think that Rodgers in a dome, I still don't know what to make of New Orleans' team this season. And also you've got a banged up secondary already that he's throwing against. I think it's a really good spot to try and target Rodgers and Adams. Did you find a second receiver for me? I found myself getting to some Tanyan, however we're going to pronounce it. But it feels nerve-wracking with Rodgers because we have so many good value receivers. Do we really need to double pair him? What do you think on that one?
I did put in the optimizer a little bit today, like some stacks of just like one quarterback, one receiver, pass catcher type option instead of double stacking a little bit.
Oh, that's right. They're not playing the dome. My bad. Sorry, I messed up. That game's
it's not a. Yeah, I was going to say it's not a dome.
I keep forgetting. It's been a long morning. I keep messing up that up. I still do like the game, but yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, I'm getting to a lot of Tanyan with Rodgers and like Adams or like, sprinkle some Cobb in there. Maybe just a couple lineups. Maybe a Lazard I really like. Not getting to MVS as much. I know someone said that in the chat, but yeah, I like Tanyan a little bit. Get different at the tight end spot is kind of where I get my stacks a little bit too.
Yeah, I could go for a little bit of Lazard actually. And you've said that we were high on him so far in the offseason and everything, and you felt you like him anyway. So I actually think that's something I could try and do a little bit of. Yeah, sorry about the mistake, guys. I understand. Got that. Anyway, but I actually did find some MVS. So you really think is that just a terrible play? Am I just wasting money on that one?
No, he's big play upside, so you can get an 85-yard touchdown or something crazy. But
yeah,
it's just something I didn't get to. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe I'm probably in the wrong there. So
no. I mean, it makes sense to me. It's funny. So we like the Josh Allen. Okay, we like Josh Allen. We like Stephon Diggs. What are we doing on the Pittsburgh side other than Najee Harris? And I love Najee Harris. What are we doing though? Like I actually am finding myself with about 10% of Claypool. I think that the primary corners are really strong for Buffalo. But I do think that when you get Claypool as a big play threat and a red zone threat, I think there's some serious up. What are your thoughts on any of the receivers for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think I got a little more Claypool than any of the other guys. I don't think I got any Juju or Deontay. I like that game. I might end up targeting it kind of late here and add a little more exposure to that on my DK lineups just because Deontay can get some catches. Roethlisberger's kind of low owned. So if you're like, maybe get a little bit more of that. But I took a stand on like some of the bigger names, Russells, Rodgers, Mahomes, and just kind of got different with my builds.
Yeah, that makes sense. I really like this Russell Wilson play a lot. And by the way, I mean, no one in the world is going to play Jonathan Taylor, and I don't think, right? Unless I'm totally missing something. I think that he's the weird running back play with monster upside. Especially if they can get off to a lead and they find him and he breaks one play. He's going to get 1 million carries if they're playing from ahead, and it's going to give Russell Wilson the opportunity to throw the ball to Lockett and Metcalf if they're playing from behind. So I really like that situation, that whole game. And I think this is going to be, look, I think things are somewhat narrative driven. That's partly why I like Rodgers so much today. And I think that Russell Wilson, I had this argument with Sheets on our show because they decided, they basically transformed their team halfway through the season and decided just to become this grinded out running team, which they had no success with. I don't know exactly what that was all about. And I understand if that's who they want as their identity and all this stuff going forward. But why are you going to mess with what works? And especially if you get behind, Seattle has the ability to put up a ton of points. And I just hope the game script works in my favor. I do like that game. Are you finding anything on the other side? I heard some other people talking about Wentz. I cannot do it. I don't have any interest in the quarterbacks on the other side, the quarterback on the other side, but I do like Pittman and I do like,
it does suck, but I do have some Wentz and in the Millie that might be my weird spot. That's just cause I like Pittman. I got a lot of Pittman and a lot of that game. I do have 10% Jonathan Taylor on FanDuel. I haven't finished my builds on DK yet, but I do like that play. I like those guys to get different. I like Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, those guys to get different in your builds. So those are the kind of guys I'm looking at to pay up or get that, not the top tier running backs, but then the next tier down. so you can mix and match those guys in there too.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I like what CP's saying in chat. Dynamic backs have been the one sort of struggle for the Bills, and Najee Harris is just a phenomenal play. I think he is a great play. The only issue you have is you have a bunch of great plays in that range. Gibson's a great play. Mixon's a great play, in my opinion. Mike Davis is cheaper, and he's a great play. There's one guy, though, that I'm definitely going to play, and he's got some previous we've seen the explosiveness. We know it's always tough because they run a bunch of different guys at you usually. I think Raheem Mostert is getting completely overlooked. Like, even if he ends up at 10% owned, that's about 20% too light for me. I love Mostert today. I like the pairing. If you're going to play Mostert, you can actually afford to play, like, especially on FanDuel, it's not as big of a gap, when you're paying for defenses. So you can play the Diners defense with Mostert, and that's a combination I found in some of my big builds today. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely like that. That looks good. So you're playing that in the bigger buy-ins?
In a couple of them. Not like that, not the massive one, just the some in the 150. What about D Eskridge? Triple J is asking about this. A lot of people are talking about this for Seattle. I'm not getting there personally, even in my stacks. Is that a mistake? Tell me your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of them. I added like 5% or something of them.
Okay.
But I like them. I like Pringle a little bit. I bumped him up to like 10% in my home stack. That's how I'm getting different than my home stack a little bit.
I like
but
that.
Yeah, I'm Eskridge popping a little bit more for me, but I'm heavy Lockett, heavy Metcalf. I kind of just threw Eskridge in there to get different so I could play some maybe chalkier plays and him being the difference in the lineup.
I like that. The only reason I'm having trouble with so I don't think Seattle is going to be an own team. I would want to take the pivot and try and get different. Like the Pringle's a great example, right? Because you want to get different with the KC thing, and you've got big play upside. And basically, if you're a wide receiver and you're going to be on the field and Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback, you've got potentially the potential, like we saw from Sammy Watkins last year, or McCole Hardman last year, or even Pringle in a couple games. You can have that 25, 30 fantasy point game anytime if things break your way. But with Seattle, my only issue is like, why do I need to get different if I've already gotten different by playing the stack in general? And is Eskridge maybe a little bit too far? So for me, I would say that's where I stand. But I definitely, I definitely get it if you're going to get the stacks. I just don't think you need to get as different with that stack as you do with the KC stack, right? Is that fair?
Hey, we got some news coming in. Looks like Zach Moss is out. We got Trey Sermon is now inactive. I mean, someone's going to have to update me on that one.
So the Moss thing, I like Josh Allen more. Right? Like, because they're not they're not going to run the ball anyway. I mean, they'll run the ball so they can pass the ball. It'll be Josh Allen running the ball, right?
Yeah. And I'm just a little nervous on that too, because I don't have a lot of Josh Allen. I might get more to him on DK.
I might have to get a little bit more of him. And, we're going to have some time. We'll get out of here in like 10 minutes, so we have time to still finish building. But I do think that makes me like Allen a little bit more. Where do we stand? We talked about ways to get different in that KC game. Really, so nobody's going to play OBJ or Landry? Is that am I reading this right? I think that's accurate, right?
Yeah, that's accurate. But you know how I said I'm getting a lot of KC, so I bumped up my Landry and Odell exposure. So they're mostly the run back, little Kareem Hunt run back too. Chubb's only in one-offs. He's not in any KC stacks as much because if Chubb's doing well, then probably it's a slower paced game where KC doesn't hit their ceiling. So I'm kind of put Hunt in those stacks a little bit with Landry or Odell. I like a lot today.
Yeah, I have a little bit of Hunt and Chubb, and I thought there was a good point Joe he was doing earlier this week, who I really think knows his stuff. Like I'm finding myself more on the Hunt side if I'm stacked in the game stacks, but I do have some interest in Chubb elsewhere, because if it's going sort of well for Chubb, it means they're having success running the ball on the ground and pounding it away or whatever. I'm not finding as much of him in I do have a couple with him, but he's not in as many of my KC stacks as Hunt is, even though I don't have like an overwhelming number of Hunt. But I found myself using Hunt more in my stacks. Where do you stand with that one in terms of which you prefer?
Yeah, just like I said, like Hunt's more in the stacks, and then.
I'm sorry, I missed you on that.
I said Hunt's in the stacks with the KC, and then Chubb's not in the stacks with KC as much because Chubb's running the ball, so less likely that the clock's grinded down, and Mahomes is probably not hitting his ceiling at the time. But I love more Odell, and on they're cheaper too. Odell's cheap on DK, I think. So. I like that.
They're really cheap, and we know that the upside is there, and we know Landry can catch 15 passes in this kind of a game. So both of the sides of both those guys I like quite a bit. What are some other plays that maybe I haven't mentioned? I'm just looking at some of my guys who I'm trying to add more to. I'll throw out a few names that maybe people haven't. Deebo Samuel, I don't have much of him, but I want to try to get a little bit. Deontay Harris, I mentioned, and Damian Harris, both Harrises. This is the problem with all these, and they're both D Harrises. But I like Damian Harris a little bit. I don't usually love playing the running backs for New England, but I think this is actually a decent spot. What are your thoughts on those guys? And is there some other plays that maybe you're higher on that we haven't really touched on?
You said Damian Harris for the Patriots?
Yeah.
Yeah, I upped my exposure on him. I actually got quite a bit of him on FanDuel.
I like
probably more than most people probably want.
Yeah, I could see it working in for him. And
I got 15% of them, so 22 lineups in the 150.
Wow, it's a pretty good number. So I'm glad we on that one.
Yeah, so he's kind of a get low on guy for me. So
yeah. If you had to pick between Robinson, one other off the board guy I have is Miles Sanders because he's going to be the forgotten guy in that range. And I can say this since I started playing DFS. I know it's a different staff. I know whatever with Atlanta, but the one thing that's always been true is any running back against Atlanta, especially any running back that has the ability to catch a few passes. And I think Miles Sanders is a little bit interesting. But if you had to pick, I actually have him below these other guys, but I'll throw him in the mix. James Robinson, Miles Sanders, Joe Mixon, Chris Carson, Antonio Gibson, Mostert. I love all of these guys, and I'm having trouble separating my love for them. Where do you sort of stand on that?
Oh, that's 50, hard.
58 to 64 range.
Yeah, I mean, James Robinson's right there under Kamara with me. Same with Derrick Henry. I'm getting massive amounts of those guys a lot. Eckler, Chris Carson, those are my highest owned guys. Delvin Cook, McCaffrey, those guys are all under 10% for me. Miles Sanders around 10% for me. Chubb, I got nothing, no mixing hardly on FanDuel. I think Minnesota Vikings defensive line had 2 people sit out last year for COVID that were good, and they boosted their defensive line. So I really think that Burrow's going to be passing the ball more versus the mix in play. So I'm kind of a little bit lower owned on him.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and it's funny because I like Mixon. Part of my liking Mixon, though, is Mixon and Harris. I mean, maybe more than even the top end running backs will be on the field probably more than any running backs this week, or as much as any running back, right? At least that's my early assessment. Do you have it any differently? That's the reason why I keep playing him. Is just I think he'll be out there for basically all the plays.
Yeah, I mean,
that's just what I've got in my notes. But
I don't mind it. Yeah, he's going to be out there for all the plays. So I mean, he's definitely a good play.
Yeah, a little bit behind the other guys, maybe in your book. That makes sense. I don't have very much Chris Carson, and I feel like that might be where I end up losing. I wanted to pick on the Indy cornerbacks, and that's if Chris Carson beats me, then Chris Carson beats me. That's the one guy I sort of have the lowest of that tier. I'm gonna pop in and see if there's any more questions. So look, so basically for the Jets, we could say Corey Davis and Elijah number 2. I think that's a fair set to say Corey Davis number 1, Elijah number 2. But it wouldn't surprise me if by week 4 we're talking, or by week 2, that we're saying Elijah Moore is clearly the number 1 receiver, right? You would have it though, as Corey Davis number 1 going into the season.
Yeah, I think Corey Davis. I got a little bit of him too, a little bit more on Yahoo, but yeah, he's the number 1 guy for now.
Makes sense to me. I am going to get a little bit more. I mentioned Pittman, and so I also met, in that game, I'm trying to target some things. I'm a little worried about how many, they do have a few other guys who between Kuti and Campbell and Pascal even. I think I don't have any Pascal and I don't have any QT, but I do have Campbell. I do have Pittman, but I think Campbell's just almost as viable as Pittman, right? Am I missing something?
Yeah, people like Campbell a lot, so I upped my exposure on him. But man, I have so much Pittman, man, it sucks.
Yeah, I like him too.
One of the guys I got to figure out here.
I'm just finding myself with some pivots off of that, and I don't think you even need to do it in game stacks. It's just even separate lineups. Like there's also the cheap wide receivers there's just so many of them, and I think it's going to make people naturally pay up. And they can go ahead and pay up for running back, but I keep trying to play in the mid tier to try and get a little bit off the board with most of my receivers. But the guys who not that Pittman's mid tier, but there's so many 3K and 300 who make sense. But yeah, I do. really solid pivot anyway. All right. Is there any other questions in chat right here? Yeah, let's get it going, Adam. Best low-owned QB on DK. Who would that be for you, do you think?
Low-owned QB on DK. There's probably a lot of them, ain't there?
Yeah.
No.
They're basically everybody except for, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, and Mahomes.
Mahomes, Allen, Murray. Hurts will be chalky a little bit. Yeah, I'd say, Rodgers, Wilson are the two guys in the mid 5% or less guys I like. Fitzpatrick, guys, if you really want like that crazy, we talked about him. I'm surprised. I like Trevor Lawrence. I built a couple lineups with him a little bit, but no run back specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I found myself doing the same thing. That's just why I didn't do that much of it.
Yeah, Baker won't have any ownership. We talked about grabbing Odell and Jarvis on a stack.
Yep.
Or you can use Kareem Hunt in that maybe. So yeah. And Wentz. I got Wentz and he ain't got any ownership.
Yeah, I know. I told you I can't bring my I have a long history of talking about, let's see, Sermon. I've got all the news here. I'm just seeing if there's anything. No Keelan Cole. That was expected. Yeah, I don't think that any of that news does anything much for me. I can't do the Wentz. I'm not going to say that Wentz will suck forever. I'll just say that this guy has been for so long while he was playing, I could not figure out what was going on. He's so bad. I understand he had a good 9-game or 11-game stretch once, but people had him rated as a top 5. I just never understood the whole Wentz thing personally, but I mean, he could still rebound his career, but I'm not a fan personally of Wentz. All right, is McCaffrey too much at 9,500? I think that the answer is this is going to be an overwhelming no, especially with the value on. It's definitely not too much for him. It's just a matter of if no one was going to play him, that'd be one thing, but he's going to be popular. He's 9,500. Cook is a great play at 9,100. I like Henry as a pivot off of both those guys, and Kamara will also be really popular. But I'm finding myself in the lower range for running backs for the most part. What are your thoughts on McCaffrey today?
Yeah, I'm low. He's under 10% on FanDuel even for me, so it's kind of crazy. I haven't really got to my DK builds yet. Yahoo, he's pretty low too. So yeah, I mean, I'm doing that lower, spending down mid-tier running backs, paying up, getting some bigger receivers, getting off those 3K receivers. So yeah,
I understand that. In my bigger builds, I definitely don't mind. I don't mind him anyway. Okay, so who do we like more, Odell or Landry? I personally am a little bit higher on Beckham, but I don't think it's a huge difference, and they're both going to be low owned. How about you?
Yeah, I got more Odell. I'm probably 50-50 on those guys. I think Odell more on DK, but other sites, Landry's priced a lot better than Odell. Just I don't know what site specific, but yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I like anyway, so thoughts on Jameis before we get out of here real quick, because I did throw a couple Jameis lineups, and I really don't like it especially because you have the Taysom Hill vulture. But I do have a little bit of Winston, playing him with Kamara and Callaway, like you're saying, and I even have him with some Callaway and Deontay Harris. What are your thoughts? Any Winston at all for you?
I think maybe no, nothing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, guys. Well,
didn't get there.
Guys, thanks for jumping on with us. I appreciate it. Love the active chat. It's going to be real quick. I guess there's one more. Mac Jones. I have no interest in Mac Jones. Jacoby. I don't mind Myers. But I don't think you need the savings at quarterback. And if I was going to play Darnold. How about you?
Yeah, I got no Mac Jones, but I got a bunch of Damian Harris, so can't play Mac Jones. I'm playing a bunch of him. So if he goes off for 3 touchdowns, I'm probably got a FanDuel lineup sitting near the top.
Yeah. All right.
So,
I hear you. I just can't get myself to need the money, but I understand it. All right, guys. Well, with that, I'm going to get out of here, finish building lineups, and let Rody get out of here and finish building his. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll keep doing this every Sunday at 11:30 Eastern. Mostly, I probably am not going to max enter every week. So I will be a little bit more relaxed. But Sheets will be with us next week, and we'll do a little 3-man booth and maybe have some more time to talk through some stuff. So, Brody, thanks so much, man, and good luck to you, and good luck to everybody out there. Win $1 million. Let's do it.
Let's go.